Wang Yuan Gore is the village secretary of Yufenggo in Sichuan province, and in the spring, he's a particularly busy man. Every day, he comes to this islet in the middle of the Jialing River to watch over the mating of more than 100 cattle. Spring is, of course, the best time to add to the number of cattle. Yufenggo village has very limited cultivated land. It's surrounded by mountains on 3 sides and is situated close to the Jialing River. Raising cattle is the villagers' only way of earning a living, and right now, it's the mating season. To find a mate, the cows and bulls in 2s and 3s make their way to the islet by swimming across the river. For Wang, all this is inspiring. More than 100 head of cattle must cross the river as efficiently as possible. It's difficult enough to herd a small number of cattle across the river. Herding more than 100 of them seems close to impossible. The only way to make it happen successfully is to get them to move spontaneously. Wang Yuan Gore is famous in these parts for his cattle raising skills. One of the reasons is that after repeated experiments, he has found the most efficient way of motivating the animals to move across the river. Wang brings his tools and calls together the other cattle farmers. They're going to rinse out the mouth of the lead cow. Each cattle farmer has a lead or head cow. Wang uses his special technique to boost the animal's appetite. At the same time, he carefully limits the amount of food the cow is given, so it will constantly feel hungry. As the village is very hilly and there's only a limited amount of cultivated land, the head cow will cross the river so it can graze on the small island. The other cows will follow. Wang is certain that this method will result in more than 100 cattle crossing the river in a very short time. It was, in fact, Wang's cattle-raising expertise that led him to be selected as the village secretary. Right now, he's gathering together some of the best cows in the village to promote them at the county's cattle festival.
为了家里讲的放牛节，做好这个充分的准备工作，今天搞一个预演。请问杨哥这些同志走前面哈，边走边去，把锣鼓敲好一点，走前面，牛啊就走后面。首先第一个要注意安全，哈，注意安全。哎，那现在就开始嘛，把锣鼓敲起来，走起来，有起来哈。今天是这县城赶集人最多，而且他那个地方上传这人比较多，就这条街耍的人比较多。看下这个王沟城有没酒？哦，尽量走慢一点哈，尽量慢点，因为牛走得慢，不像人走那么快，想快点快个。哦。
你相当于下腿赶不上2条腿啊？4条腿赶不上2条腿。
This is the first parade organized by Yufungo Village, and everyone is enjoying the atmosphere of happiness and curiosity. But some of the cattle take a distinct dislike to all this activity and refuse to do what's wanted of them. Before long, there's an accident. Half an hour later, they hit the road again. Although the cow's behavior just now seemed quite intimidating, the fact is the local villagers are quite familiar with cattle. It takes 2 hours for the cattle to walk from the village to the county town. On the way, Wang enthusiastically promotes the coming spectacle of more than 100 cattle crossing the river. The beating of the drums helps to accept the atmosphere of excitement and anticipation he wishes to encourage. And he's quite satisfied that his promotional effort is a success. A lot of money has been saved as well. It's a satisfying result for all concerned. Since cattle I don't want to bring them back home. The problem for Wang is that to have the spectacle of over 100 cattle crossing the river, they have to make all the cattle go to the island in the morning and come back in the evening every day. Wang decides it would be better to bring all the cattle together to raise them, but he will need to build a new home for them by the river.
这个牛的训练必须要有牛棚，有过的这个固才得行，要把这个口子打出来啊，要设置停车场，这样要占地一。又来了。
Both the cowshed and parking lot will take up a lot of land. And as cultivatable land is a very scarce commodity, pulling this part of the project off will be a big challenge. Wang hopes he'll be able to rent some land from the villagers for 500 yuan a year for every 0.2 acres of land. Some of the villagers, however, are vehemently opposed to this idea. To solve this thorny problem, Wang has to win the support of one person in particular.
只要他带头，那个应该是没问题。但是如何打开他这个局面呢？叫他能够开口啊？
This key figure is Wang's uncle, Wang Chuman, Yufungo's former village secretary. Whatever he says will almost certainly sway the villagers one way or the other. But as his uncle's farmland is among the land that will be utilized if the proposal goes ahead, Wang Yuangor wonders whether winning his support is at all likely. After several days of discussion, Wang finally figures out a way that could bring the interests of all the villagers together. They will start a joint stock cattle raising cooperative. One share will be equal to 5 cattle. The more shares one has, the more profit one will get. What's more, only shareholders will be able to participate in the construction of the needed tourist facilities, and those involved will be paid for their work. It sounds like a clever idea, and it puts Wang in a good mood.
哦，等一会儿给我们烧了开水出来，是不是啊？哈，要你亲自做，笑起来了。
The next problem is acquiring funding. Wang drives his car everywhere. He paid 3,000 yuan for it, and at the time, it was the first car in the village. He's understandably very attached to it.
没事
啊，
没事没事，
车门掉了，
没事。
这个车也太旧了点了。
才觉得那个车都是个工作的效益，买车的家里面买车的就少。如果车好多老百姓羡慕，上街要办事啊，到他家去啊，有时候打几分钟就到了。我把车门关了，关到车，车好。上后面的这边是吧？那么多的。
Whenever he goes out on official business, Wang always cleans his car so as to give people a better impression.
别冲了，漏水了，停，漏了，全是水，快擦一下。
好，可以了，好，可以了。
As part of his determination to do all he can to raise funding for the project, Wang convenes a village meeting. He wants to settle all matters relating to the cooperative.
我们村里想成立一个养鸡专业合作社。今天我们开了个村民大会来讨论一下，主要是具体的方案。
The cooperative stipulates that the cattle farmers are not allowed to sell their cattle by themselves. Li Dinghui is one of those strongly opposed to this idea. As Li is a major cattle farmer in these parts, his views will have a considerable influence on whether or not the cooperative goes ahead. Wang is very keen to win him over.
你家里的就多，是不是啊？我们成立合作社以后，就由你来任组长，好好的思考一下，同意了，就签字，是不是啊？就我就签字。
有就是件好事情，我也把字签了。
The village can reimburse certain expenses, for example, the group leader's phone bill. And the group leader will be the one who will lead the villagers when they herd the cattle. Basically, Li will get a bigger dividend. Although it's not a powerful position, it's certainly a decent one. In the end, Li finally agrees. Wang has come up with a clever idea to celebrate the launch of the cooperative.
所以您这个栽的是什么树啊？这是？
到底我摇钱树。
为什么想把这树栽在这里啊？
那个现在在那个下午该修了个财神楼，我们现在就是要想这个不觉得栽我摇钱树，我还想把那个下午该的财神楼钱全部要得用丢出来，使全村人民富足起
来。The construction of the cowshed has begun, and the shareholders are getting their payouts for the first time. Aware of the benefits of the cooperative, the villagers now admire Wang even more than before. The new cowshed is opposite the Jialing River. Wang has come to the small island yet again. He'll be driving the cattle into the new cowshed. As the cowshed is still being built, for now, the cattle can still roam free on the island. They have become stronger and rather wilder.
他都喂野了，没叫被喂到河畔的，你要做他就跟着跑，都跟着跑了。
As herding the cattle turns out to be far more difficult than Wang expected, he asks many of the other cattle farmers to help him. After a considerable amount of effort, they finally catch the head cow. Wang tries to tame it by riding on its back. But before long, there's an accident. He falls off its back. Wang asks Li Dinghui to drive the cattle into the cowshed. The problem is that having been totally free for so long to roam on the small island at will, these cattle are in no mood to leave.
哎呦，好几人咯！我要了，你把要得来的要去了啷做？
The cattle have been free for too long. They're now virtually wild. Adapting to their new lives in the pens is proving difficult. Li has been raising cattle for more than 20 years, and this is the first time he's had to deal with anything like this. He feels both angry and helpless. The cattle are not interested in the new cowshed. They totally refuse to go inside. The cattle are obstinately refusing to enter the cowshed. In the confusion, several of them fall over the cliff. One of the animals belongs to Li. The cooperative forbids them from selling their cattle privately. Li's only source of income is his cattle. If anything bad happens to them, it will be difficult for him to make a living. After searching for the whole night, Li still hasn't found his cow. When Wang hears about this, he calls an emergency meeting to try to find a solution. Li hasn't found his cow, and for him, it's a huge loss. It's not surprising that he's so emotional. Wang still hasn't come up with a solution. Now the rest of the villagers are concerned that if they continue to quarrel like this, the situation will get even worse. So they persuade Li to leave. To ensure that the spectacle of 100 cattle crossing the river will go ahead, Wang has committed 30,000 yuan from his own pension fund to it. What Li has done has made him feel wronged. And now he's heard that Li has decided to sell one of his cows privately. Li's attitude makes Wang feel both annoyed and stressed. Now all he can do is talk with the cattle dealer. Wang reaches an agreement with the cattle dealer. When this village's cattle industry is more developed, they'll sell the cattle to him at the lowest price. Although this is, of course, just an empty promise, the cattle dealer agrees to withdraw his offer.
那个除了你就下你来，你就把钱跟你定费，等于是我们刚才说6000块钱给他，我给他，给了，我们村长买了，你把钱都签到我们邮封去。
Wang has bought Li's cow to stop the cattle dealer buying cattle in the village. More importantly, he knows that Li's family is in trouble. This is Li's home, halfway up the hill by the Jialing River. A few days ago, a landslip destroyed part of his property, and at the moment, they don't even have a place to sleep.
现在伯伯，你看我现在的下面的基本上垮完了，因为那边垮，现在根本地瓜都不好走了。一涨水了，大雨我都在别家去住，我根本都没法住，因为后面也垮噻，前面也垮都没法了。你像那么稍微涨水，有时候我都跑到过那边去住。那个房子都是一般的个，它稍微不落雨的话哈，我们只睡到桃屋里头。 晚上都睡到凉床，那个凉床嘛，你睡到凉床高头哎，一般就头都朝那面的。还有就是雨问他，我们就是说遇到风下雨之类的时候，如果发生情况，起得跑噻。
Wang absolutely must solve the problems the villagers are facing to have any chance of making the cattle river crossing spectacle take place. The reality is that many of the villagers are faced with problems similar to Li's.
16户涉及到60多个人。国家有个移民区。 铁矿扶贫了项目，争取1200多万的资金项目建设，那我们做的那叫建居民点。
After much effort, Wang has finally acquired the funds needed to relocate the villagers whose houses have been destroyed in the landslip, and he also has the plan for developing his village into a model tourist village. The new layout of the village has also been drawn up. Many of the new houses will be converted into countryside inns. But right now, the villagers are looking forward to the opening day of the cattle festival. The opening ceremony attracts tens of thousands of tourists. In fact, the village becomes so busy that the traffic police have to be called in to direct all the vehicles flooding into town. Bringing to reality his dream of creating the spectacle of 100 cattle crossing the river has been Wang's greatest wish for a decade. Today, the cattle will finally take their place on the stage of Yufungo village. The cattle are wandering about in the beautiful Jialing River. Led by the head cow, they form a line and wind their way forward. This scene is very familiar to many of the tourists who have come here. Traditional agricultural life in the countryside is being replaced by the emerging tourism economy. This once threatened village of Yufungo is starting a new journey, and this spectacle has become one of its iconic images.
对于油坊构成的未来，争取在民间指在油坊构成的山清水秀、牛更壮、人更贤惠、有吃有喝、有住有玩乐。
Two white-collar workers come back to the countryside to raise chickens. But there are always contradictions between dreams and reality.
那你派我进来干什么？
维护路面的大雨，一时就没尊重我。
现在我肯定要告你，我必须把这事做成。
Join us for part 3 of Village Experts.